Hello and welcome to our video over data structures and decisions, specifically the various settings that each of the structures have. Now, especially when you're new to decisions, but even sometimes when you're trying to figure out the best things that you want to use to build in your projects, the data structures can definitely be a little overwhelming. And especially with all the various settings, it can be very easy to miss some things that can become very useful for you to use when you're building in decisions. So I want to highlight a number of the various settings that we can have with a bunch of the different data structures and decisions and how you can build with them. So I'm going to start with the simpler ones and build all the way up to the complex case data structures, case entities to discuss how they work. So I'm going to start though with the flow structures. Flow structure is the most basic type of structure you can make really in decisions when you're building with things to kind of combine a bunch of types together into one major type, but there's not a lot of settings because they don't do a lot. They don't really save to the database either. So I just have a few options within that I have the ability to set in here. So you have the ability to hide in the search. So if you're searching for this, you won't find the data type. You have the category order option. This just allows you the data fields to be organized in some way. You have the can be base type that just allows this to be used um, as a super class if you'd like to for other subclasses, and then include type name in description. So the type name that you created, you can show or hide that option if you want to. The only other setting that you have in here, which doesn't get displayed immediately, but you can see it when you go and create a new flow structure, is the type namespace. The type namespace will be combined with whatever you type in this space and whatever the structure type name is to create the table in the system for whatever gets saved to the database. So the type namespace and the structure type name combine to make the actual namespace itself so that you can actually reference that in the database. It applies more to the ones that get saved to the database. So that's why it doesn't appear after you create it, but this cannot be edited or changed after you create the data structure. So keep that in mind if you want to change exactly what that is. Let me open up the data structure now and show the database structure and the major differences there. So you can see there's quite a few similarities. The designer itself is the same, but the options, there's a few of the matching options that both of these entities actually have. And so you can see things like hiding in search is still there, the category orders, the base type, type name. You can actually see the table name is actually listed here as well. And since I've already created this structure, I do not have the ability to change that table name. So when I first created it, I could have changed that. There's your type namespace that you type in the text box there. And then the second part is your actual type name that is made up here. And so that is the data that you save there. So the table is officially saved now as this. This is what it refers to in the database whenever I am trying to find or look for anything. Now, a few of the other settings that we have, you have the ability to enable caching. This is exactly as it sounds. It allows the entity to actually be loaded into the cache for anything like that. You also have include ID in flow cache key. So this will add the GUID or ULID into the cache step key for easy searching and things like that. We have the audit changes option. This will essentially allow you to any changes that you make to this entity when you're saving it, this database structure or whatever. When you save the data from that save will get sent to the the audited entities table, so that you can monitor it if you're trying to monitor any changes to your structures or to the data in your system. You can audit all those changes. There's also an enable batch load option that is not in every data structure, but it is in database structures and a couple others. That this just allows you to this just essentially allows batch insert actions to be taken on the back end when you're looking at things to try to batch insert or save a whole bunch of data. Um, Last couple options we have are there's lookup lists, so you can just denote whether or not this is going to be a lookup list. So you can specify that here and check that box if you would like to make this data type uh, be treated as a lookup list, and then provide that data and everything as well. And then the last option is enable actions. So what this one does, if you're not familiar, a lot of these structures in decisions, the case entities, folder extensions, entities, they all have configuration folders by default. Database structures do not have configuration folders by default, but they can have them. And this is what that enable actions option does. So you can see here actually on the side, I have a case entity, an entity, and a folder extension, configuration folders, and same things I have in here. So if I enable actions, it'll allow me to add things if if I'd like to add category names or anything. But once I save this, once it recompiles this structure, it'll also provide for me the configuration folder that I could use now with that database structure. So this database structure will now allow me to build and utilize a configuration folder so that I can, do any of the actions that I need or extend the capabilities of my structure there inside a configuration folder. There we go. And now it's loaded in. Let me refresh. And there we have now my database structures configuration folder. So it just took a second to load in, but now I have a configuration folder with the same kind of normal actions I have with configuration folders that I can build on in my database structure here. So that's what the add actions option allows me to do. If I want to add a configuration folder, it allows me to do that. So I can build all the normal configuration folder things there. Now, continuing to go up in complexity, we have entities. So entities have a lot of similarities to database structures, but they have a little bit more of the capabilities. They have configuration folders by default, so we won't have those options added like that action button. But you can see a lot of these settings are pretty much exactly the same. You still have the table names, caching options, auditing changes, batch load, lookup lists. The only difference is you have 3 additional actions at the bottom. So instead of just creating the configuration folder like database structures had, we have the ability to add with data. This is upon right click, I can add a new entity straight from there. We have delete action. So if I right click on something that is an entity type, this specific entity type, as long as this is checked, then I will be able to find the delete action there. And then the edit action. If I right click, I have the ability to edit it and make changes to that entity. Without these checked, you will not be able to do those. You would have to resort to deleting or editing using the CRUD actions or other steps to delete data or update data and things like that. And so that's what these actions are. If you want someone to have the ability to do them by right clicking the entity and being able to delete or edit or make those kinds of changes, then you need these to be checked. And I'll show an example of that shortly. But let's jump up to folder extensions now. So folder extensions have quite a few differences and new options that some of the other options did not have before. So there's a whole section up here at the top about behavior that is unique to folder extensions and case entities. Because folder extensions provide items that have folder behavior, these are settings that will affect the folders that are generated within these things. So you have the ability to show, hide, or collapse the action bar across the top when you're looking at those folders. So if you don't want the action bar to be there, you can hide it, things like that. There's a lock screen timeout, so it'll just lock the screen if there's a certain timeout period that has passed. You have the ability to show the default folder pages, so obviously just show that default folder, or if you don't want it to show the default folder, then you uncheck that. Show in tree is a very useful option here. If you do not have this set, whenever you go to the folder that contains all these folder extensions, you will not see the other folder extensions on the side here. You would see them all just in the main view in the middle. If you have show in tree selected, then as you create new folder extensions, not only will they appear in the middle, they'll also appear in the folder tree through a dropdown, similar to how this dropdown has the configuration folders underneath it. And I'll show an example of that shortly as well. There's the define default page name. You can specify the default page name if you want, and then can be set by user allows you to change the folder behavior options by right-clicking if you would like them, if you would like users to be able to do that. Beyond that, we got the typical advanced settings that have been the same throughout all the other past structures. And then when you have actions, you have a lot more actions to choose from than we did with the previous example of entities. So actions here, in addition to the add and delete and edit options that we had, you can also add the category names and things, but you also have the ability to add comments and documents, change permissions, provide the ability to move things. You can add to-dos. In version 9, we utilize to-dos a lot. You can also have the ability to change the name. And so all of these things are not there by default. This is a structure that I created, and I just created it, and then I just reopened it now. So I have not added it or added or removed anything here, this is completely default. None of these options are available. So if you want to extend the capabilities through right-click actions on any of your folder extensions, you can start adding some of these things. So if you want people to be able to edit the folder extension or be able to add that folder extension and add new data and things like that, you can do that. And then, sometimes they'll add additional things. Like if I want to add data, I can override what the create action actually looks like and what I want that to be called, different things like that. So making these adjustments just changes some of the options that I have upon right clicking the entities or the folder extensions, I should say. All right, the last one to take a quick look at are case entities. The most complex out of all of them. They have a lot of similar behaviors to folder extensions, but they go a little bit further. So at the very beginning, you've got case setup options. Every single case entity you create is going to have some case ID associated with it, and this is what you can use to set up and change what that case ID looks like. So you can have a prefix of something as well as a digit of length, and then every single time you make a new case entity, that value will go up by 1. So if I leave it as default, it'll be C000001, and then the next one that I create would be C000002, and so on and so forth. So then you can freely change this. Let's say you're building something that has loan applications, you can make this prefix LA. Maybe you're doing purchase requests, you can make the prefix PR, and then you can change the length of that ID however you want to. You can make it really short, you can make it really long, whatever it is, and then it'll automatically just add in increments as you make more case entities in your system. It's got the same folder behavior. Since case entities have folder behavior, we have the same folder behavior options, just like we did with folder extensions that I just explained. All the advanced settings are pretty much exactly the same, except there is one additional setting that is not available in any of the previous ones, and that is the ability to enable process mining. And then you get the periodic reports options as well if you do decide to enable process mining. Process mining is a functionality that is only available to case entities and not any other data structures, but it does allow you to directly link with our process mining tool. So if you want to enable process mining with this case entity, you need to check that box. And then you could very easily connect this case entity with the process mining tool and decisions as well. So then you can use those in hand when you're building with things. And then lastly, the actions, mostly the same. There's a few differences here and there. There are default things that are on. This is another one I did not make any changes. I just created it as it is. So adding with data, showing descriptions and comments and documents are also just there by default. You do not need to add those separately if you need to, but you can uncheck those if you want to hide those abilities or add new abilities like delete and edit and move and permissions and things like that. Since case entities also utilize states, there is an option at the bottom to show the change state action. So if I don't want users to be able to change the states by right clicking, then I would want to remove that. That way they don't right click and be able to just change states automatically, things like that. But if I do want that ability for some people, maybe some people or all people I want to be able to right click and change the states, then I would leave that checked and I'd have to use visibility rules to hide that for people that I don't want to see all of those actions and things. So those are the main settings. I just want to highlight a couple of them just in a quick look so you can see how exactly they play out when I'm building with them. So here is one example that I have with a folder extension. So here's a folder extension. We have the show in tree option on this folder extension set as one of the main things to highlight. And then in addition to that, we have some of these actions available, the ability to add, delete and edit, manage permissions, and move. But all the other options we will not have, so we can't do any of those items. So then if I go to anything that is a type of loan, let's say I did not have folder tree selected, then I would just see this types of loan folder. And when I clicked on it, I could see the folder extensions that are inside it with these three options. But since I do have show in tree selected, there's a drop down now underneath this. So in addition to seeing them in here, I can also see the folder extensions in my folder tree. So for navigational purposes, it's up to you if you want those to appear in the tree or not for how it looks. Aside from that, if you right click on them, you have the options, and this is where you'll see some of these available actions that you've created. So I have the ability to edit, so I see edit type of loan action. I have permissions, so I see permissions available. If I go to more, this is where I can find delete and move. Those are also actions that I've allowed in this project. The ability to add new ones. So if I right click on type of loan and I go to add and then entity user defined, I can see my type of loan. So if I want to add a new type of loan, I have automotive house at new business. I can add a fourth one underneath that. I can just right click and create it instead of having to go into a flow and using the CRUD action or something to create a new entity and save it. You can simply just right click and do it, which is useful in many cases. Or you can simply just go and edit and make changes. And if I wanted to maybe remove that, let's say I don't want the user to have the ability to delete some of these things, I can go ahead and remove the delete action, save that folder extension option. I think I'll have to refresh really quick. And now if I right click on this and I go to more, I only can move. I don't have delete, and delete was here right a few minutes ago. So it is available. It is no longer available for me to delete things in here. With regards to case entities, here's just a quick example of the case entity and how the case ID that you create gets generated with whatever the prefix is, however many digits you choose, and as you create new items. So here I've created this. This is the fifth one I've created, so it's 000005. And then we've got 000006, and so on and so forth. So I have the ability to see those that'll automatically update, and it adds them to whatever I name my folder when I create my case entity. Upon right click, I have the ability to change the state because I did not uncheck that option to hide the change state action. So I could simply just right click on one of these and change the state and move it to a completely different state if I wanted to manually change the state for testing purposes or for whatever other reasons that I may have for doing that. So overall, that's everything about the different structures in decisions and some of their major settings. I just wanted to make sure that we highlight those so that hopefully this gives you a good idea of some of the options that you have and some of the capabilities that can extend all of your data structures and decisions and how you can use them. Thank you for watching.